The new car was shiny, bright red, and parked proudly in my parents' driveway, looking like it had rolled straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. I gripped the steering wheel of my own car, my knuckles turning pale, my heart pounding as Lauren danced around her new prize, squealing with delight, as if she'd just won the lottery. Maybe she had, using my money. My name's Jacqueline, and in that moment, I stood there watching my little sister steal the future I'd spent years building, piece by piece. Isn't she beautiful? Lauren gushed, running her freshly manicured fingers along the car's sleek hood, her voice dripping with pride. I got such an incredible deal. The salesman practically handed it to me for a song. I stepped out of my plain, reliable BMW, still in my work clothes, exhausted after a grueling 10-hour shift at the financial firm where I crunched numbers and chased stability. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, another notification, probably another alert about my bank account being overdrawn. I'd been ignoring those messages for days, clinging to the hope that it was all some kind of mistake, a glitch in the system. But deep down, I knew better. "Lauren," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. "Where did you get the money for this?" She flipped her perfectly styled hair that looked just like Mom's, always so polished, always so effortless, and flashed me a smug smile. "Oh, Jacqueline, don't start with the lecture, okay? Mom and Dad helped me figure it out. Right, guys?" Our parents stood behind her on the front porch, smiling like proud spectators at a parade, clutching champagne glasses that glinted in the evening light. Mom gave me that look, the one that always said, "Please, don't ruin this moment." She needed a reliable car, sweetheart, Mom said, walking over with that practiced softness in her voice. "We just used that emergency account you set up for the family." My heart stopped. The world tilted. That wasn't an emergency fund. That was my house down payment. $50,000. Every penny I'd scrimped and saved for years, gone in an instant. My dream of a home, a place of my own, vanished like smoke. "Don't be so dramatic, Jacqueline," Lauren said, rolling her eyes as if my pain was just a minor inconvenience. "You're so good with money. You'll save it all again in no time. Besides, you always say family comes first, don't you?" "Family comes first?" I repeated, my voice trembling as I pulled out my phone and shoved the screen in her face, showing her my bank balance. "You left me with $150, Lauren. $150. And you didn't even ask me." Dad cleared his throat, stepping forward, his champagne glass still in hand. "Now, Jacqueline, your sister has job interviews coming up. She needs to make a good impression." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed in the driveway. "What interviews, Dad? The ones after the 3 jobs she quit this year? Or maybe the ones for the degree she never finished?" Lauren's face crumpled, and right on cue, she burst into tears. "Mom, she's being so mean," she cried, her voice cracking for maximum effect. Mom rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her like she was shielding a wounded child. "Jacqueline, please," Mom said, her tone pleading. "You know your sister's been going through such a hard time. We need to support her. You've always been the strong one, the responsible one. The strong one. The responsible one. The one who paid the bills, kept the secrets, fixed every mess they made." I'd been carrying that burden since I was a teenager. At 14, I was waking up early to help Lauren get ready for school while Mom slept off another one of her headaches. I was balancing Dad's checkbook because he couldn't figure out why the account was always empty. I was working 2 jobs in college to keep the family afloat while Lauren flitted from one failed dream to another. "You're right," I said quietly, my voice steady now as I pulled out my phone again. "I am the strong one." Mom's face softened, a smile creeping in as if she thought I was about to cave. "And I'm also the one whose name is on every single family bank account," I added, dialing a number. "The one who's been paying off Dad's credit cards since he decided to retire early with no savings. The one who used her own savings as a backup for your so-called emergency loans." Dad froze, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. "What are you doing, Jacqueline?" "Yes, hello," I said into the phone, my voice calm but firm. "This is Jacqueline Maddow." I'd like to close account number 556148 immediately. Yes, I understand it will affect other linked accounts, I continued. That's exactly what I want. Mom gasped, lunging for my phone, but I stepped back, out of her reach. Jacqueline, you can't do this, she cried. Actually, I can, I said, looking straight at Lauren, who was staring at me, wide-eyed, her tears suddenly gone. It's my money. Enjoy the car, sis. I hope it was worth it. You're just jealous. Lauren screamed as I turned toward my car. Jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. Jealous that I'm living my best life while you're stuck being boring and miserable. I stopped, my hand resting on the car door, and turned to face her. You know what's funny about karma, Lauren? It doesn't always wait. Sometimes it shows up right away when someone deserves it. What does that mean? She snapped, her voice sharp with defiance. I smiled, sliding into my driver's seat. You'll see. In about 96 hours, give or take, when those credit cards stop working. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Dad frantically dialing his phone, Mom clutching Lauren, who was already crying again. They looked like the perfect family portrait hanging on their living room wall, the one I'd paid for last Christmas, just like I'd paid for everything else. Not anymore. I pulled over a few blocks away, my hands still trembling from the confrontation, and called someone else. Scott, it's me, I said when he picked up. Remember when you told me to stop helping them? Well, I finally did something big. About time, he said, his voice warm with relief. Want to grab a drink and tell me everything? I glanced back toward my parents' house, where Lauren's shiny new car still sat, glowing in the sunset like a trophy. Yes, I said. And bring your laptop. We're going to need it. As I drove away, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows behind me. I was done being their backup plan, their safety net, their personal bank. Let Lauren enjoy her little kingdom built on credit and lies. It was about to come crashing down. They say revenge is best served cold, but I was just getting started, and my heart was burning with resolve. A few hours later, I sat across from Scott at a dimly lit bar, the clink of ice in my gin and tonic grounding me as I recounted the day. For days, Scott said, sliding his laptop across the table. That's how long it takes for the system to close those accounts and start the chain reaction. I stared into my drink, the ice shifting softly. They've called 25 times since yesterday, I said, my voice heavy. I stopped counting the texts. Let me see, Scott said, picking up my phone. He scrolled through the messages, reading a few out loud in a mocking tone. Jacqueline, please call us right away. It's an emergency. Your sister is crying herself sick. We raised you better than this. He snorted. Oh, that's rich. Did they really raise you better? I took a slow sip, the gin sharp on my tongue. You know what I remember from growing up? Making Lauren's lunch while Mom was lying down. Helping Dad with the checkbook at 14 because he couldn't figure out why the account was always empty. Being told I couldn't go to the college I wanted because Lauren needed braces. And now I trailed off, shaking my head. They took my house down payment. Scott's fingers flew across his laptop keyboard, his expression darkening. Look at this, he said, turning the screen toward me. They've been siphoning money from your linked accounts for years. Small amounts, $130 here, $60 there, but it adds up. Even in the dim bar light, I could see the long list of transactions scrolling across the screen, a trail of betrayal stretching back years. They thought I wouldn't notice, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I never did before. My phone buzzed again, Mom's name flashing on the screen. You should answer it, Scott said, his eyes serious. They need to know this isn't a game anymore. I took a deep breath and picked up the call. Hello. Jacqueline, Mom's voice trembled, on the verge of tears. The bank called. They're saying something about credit lines being canceled and accounts frozen. What did you do? Exactly what I told you I'd do, I said, my tone even. I closed my accounts. But your father's credit cards aren't working, she cried. We have bills to pay. Lauren needs. I cut her off, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. What about what I need, Mom? Like the house I've been saving for since I was 24. That's different, she said quickly, her voice defensive. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said, my words sharp and final. I looked at Dad's credit report. I'm still listed as an authorized user. He's maxed out on 7 cards, and I've been making the minimum payments for 3 years. Silence stretched across the line. Then, in a whisper, she said, Jacqueline, please. Just come over. We can talk about this. Sure, I said, finishing my drink and setting the glass down with a soft clink. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Scott raised an eyebrow as I hung up. You're really going? They need to see my face, I said, grabbing my purse, my resolve hardening. When their world finally falls apart, I want them to look me in the eye. Want backup? He asked, already standing. I nodded. Let's go. 20 minutes later, I walked into my parents' living room, the familiar scent of Mom's lavender candles doing nothing to ease the tension in the air. Lauren sat on the couch, her mascara streaked down her face, her perfect composure shattered. Dad paced near the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and urgent. The bank won't budge, he said as he hung up, his face pale. They're calling in all the credit lines by Sunday. Something about uncollateralized loans. That would be my savings account, I said, sitting down and crossing my legs, my voice calm but cutting. The one Lauren emptied for her shiny new car. This isn't funny, Jacqueline. Lauren shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. They're saying I could lose the car. Do you know how embarrassing that would be? Almost as embarrassing, I replied, my tone steady, as having to tell my real estate agent I lost the down payment for my dream home. Or maybe it's just as humiliating as realizing my own family has been using me like their personal ATM for years. We never wanted to hurt you, Mom said, tears welling in her eyes as she sat beside Lauren. Things have been so tight since your father retired at 56 with no savings after you warned him it was a terrible idea, I might add. Dad's face turned red, his voice rising. Now listen here, young lady. No, you listen, I said, standing up, my voice cutting through the room like a knife. For years, I've cleaned up your messes, paid your bills, and kept your secrets. And how do you thank me? By helping Lauren steal the one thing I've been working toward, my house. But you're so good with money, Lauren cried, her voice dripping with entitlement. You can save it again. You're right, I said, stepping toward the door, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. I am good with money. That's why I'm cutting you all off for good. You can't do this to us. Mom yelled, grabbing my arm in a desperate attempt to stop me. I gently but firmly moved her hand away. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not use them like a financial backup plan. And they definitely don't steal their dreams to fund another child's reckless choices. Jacqueline, please, Dad said, his voice shaking, his usual confidence gone. Check your mail tomorrow, I said as I opened the door, my tone cold but controlled. The bank is sending official letters about your defaulted accounts. Oh, and Lauren? You might want to keep that car in the garage. Repo men work at night. I closed the door behind me with a soft click, the sound echoing in my ears like a final note. Outside, Scott was waiting in his car, the engine humming softly. You okay? He asked as I buckled my seatbelt. I looked up and saw Mom in the window, already on the phone, probably calling her sister to beg for money. Lauren stood beside her, still crying, still playing the victim. No, I answered honestly, my voice quiet but steady. But I will be. For the first time in my life, I will be. For days later, I sat in my apartment, the weight of everything still pressing down on me. Scott stood by the window, peering outside. They're out there again, he said, his tone a mix of frustration and disbelief. Your mom's crying in the car and Lauren's pressing every buzzer in the building. I didn't look up from my laptop, where I was sorting through emails from the bank. It's been 4 days. Even the neighbors are starting to complain. My phone lit up with another text from Lauren. You're destroying this family. Actually, a new voice said from the kitchen, they're doing a great job of that all by themselves. It was Helen, my best friend and realtor, walking in with 4 cups of coffee and a grin. The repo guys picked up Lauren's car this morning, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I might have recorded it. Show me, I said, reaching for her phone. The video played on the small screen, Lauren screaming hysterically as three quiet, professional men hooked her precious red sports car to a tow truck. Mom tried to block the truck with her body, her arms flailing dramatically, while Dad waved a stack of papers, looking desperate and defeated. "Those papers," I said, pausing the video and pointing at the screen, "are probably the loan documents they signed using my name without permission. I found out yesterday it's identity theft." Helen let out a long whistle. "That's not just karma anymore. That's a crime." The buzzer rang again, Lauren's voice crackling through the intercom. "I know you're in there. You can't ignore us forever." "Watch me," I muttered, but Helen was already marching to the intercom. "Listen up, you spoiled brat," she snapped into the speaker, her voice sharp and unyielding. "Your sister isn't coming to save you anymore. Try getting a job instead of calling a lawyer, you'll need both." Scott nearly choked on his coffee. "Wow, Helen." Harsh but true. She turned back to me, her expression softening. "By the way, did you file those identity theft charges?" "Tomorrow morning," I said, pulling up the files on my laptop. I had the documents ready, proof they'd used my name to secure loans I never approved, opened credit cards I never knew about, and drained accounts I'd worked so hard to build. The buzzer started again, this time relentless, a non-stop assault of noise. Now Mom's voice joined Lauren's, both talking over each other, begging, pleading, manipulating. "That's it," Helen said, grabbing her purse. "I'm calling the police. This is harassment." "Wait," I said, standing up, my heart pounding, but my steps steady. "I'll handle it." I took the elevator down, my pulse racing, but my resolve unshaken. When I reached the lobby, I saw Lauren's tear-streaked face pressed against the glass, Mom standing behind her, looking frantic. Lauren rushed inside the moment I opened the door. "Do you even know what you've done?" she cried, her voice raw with panic. "The bank froze everything. Dad might get charged with fraud." "That's what happens when you forge loan documents," I said calmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "We didn't forge anything," Mom said quickly, stepping forward. "We just used your name as a guarantor. You always helped us before. Always helped." I felt something snap inside me, years of pent-up frustration boiling over. "You mean like when I was 14, waking up at 4 a.m. to tutor Lauren because you couldn't? Or when I worked 2 jobs in college while Lauren dropped out of 3 schools, using my money? Or how about when I was 11 and you took my birthday money from Grandma to pay for Lauren's dance lessons? That's not fair." Lauren stepped closer, her face twisted with anger. "You're just jealous." "Jealous of what?" I cut her off, my voice steady but sharp. "That Mom and Dad love you more? They can keep their love. I'm done paying for it." "Please," Mom said, grabbing my hand, her eyes desperate. "We can fix this. Just tell the bank it was all a mistake." I pulled my hand away, my heart aching, but my resolve firm. "Like when I was 11 and you said it was just for 1 dance class. Or last Christmas, when Dad borrowed my credit card so Lauren could go on her spring break trip." "No, Mom. Those were practice runs. You've been testing my limits my entire life, seeing how much I'd give before I broke." "Well, congratulations, you did it. I'm done." Lauren's face fell, but her voice still held defiance. "You're my sister. You're supposed to protect me." "I did protect you," I said, my voice steady but heavy with the weight of years. "For 31 years, I protected you from the real world. But not anymore." A police car pulled up outside, and Helen stepped out of her car right behind it. "Miss," the officer said, walking toward me, his tone professional but kind. "We got a call about harassment." "That's them," Helen said, pointing at Mom and Lauren. "They've been bothering my friend for days." Mom's face turned pale. "Jacqueline, you wouldn't." "I would," I said, stepping back into the building. "And if you come here again, I'll add it to the identity theft charges I'm filing tomorrow." "Identity theft?" The officer's expression turned serious. "Ma'am, I need both of you to step away from the building." I watched through the lobby windows as the officer escorted them to their car. Lauren looked back once, her face the mix of anger and fear. Mom didn't look back at all. Upstairs, Scott and Helen were waiting with fresh coffee and worried looks. They're gone, I said, dropping onto the couch, exhaustion washing over me. Maybe not forever, but at least for now. Helen sat beside me, her voice soft but firm. You know what the best kind of revenge is? Living well. I thought you were going to say buying my dream house, I said, managing a small smile. Nope, she grinned. Buying that dream house, only bigger and better. And guess what? I just found one that fits your budget, now that you're not supporting 4 people. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Show me, I said, leaning forward. You won't believe this, Scott said, his laptop casting a soft blue glow across the kitchen table. It was past midnight, and we'd been digging through financial records for hours, empty takeout boxes scattered around us as evidence of our late-night investigation. Look at this, he said, pointing at the screen. See these transfers? Every month for the past 4 years, small amounts of money have been moving from your savings into an account I've never seen before. That's not possible, I said, leaning over his shoulder, my eyes scanning the numbers. I watch my accounts carefully. They did it through that old joint account you opened with your mom in college, Scott explained, his voice low. The one you forgot about. They've been using it like a hidden tunnel, siphoning money right under your nose. My phone buzzed with another message from Lauren. Dad's having chest pains because of you. Hope you're happy. Don't answer her, Scott said, his eyes still on the screen. Wait, look at this. He pulled up a web of money transfers, the lines stretching across the screen like a spider's web, showing cash flowing from my accounts to Lauren's pocket or to pay off my parents' credit cards. For $100,000, Scott whispered, his voice heavy with disbelief. That's how much they've taken over the years. My head spun, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. That can't be. The numbers don't lie, he said, showing me more files. And there's something else. Your name is on Lauren's car loan. You're listed as a co-signer. I never signed anything, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Then we've got them, Scott said, grabbing his phone. This is real fraud. A sudden knock at the door made us both jump. I peeked through the peephole. It was Helen, holding a large envelope. You need to see this, she said as she rushed in. I was checking the property records for that house we looked at, and guess what showed up? Your parents listed you as a guarantor on their condo refinance last week. I grabbed the papers from her, my eyes scanning the documents. My signature was there, but it was clearly forged. They're getting desperate, Scott said. The banks are closing in, and they're using your name to stay afloat. Just then, my phone rang. It was my boss, Justin, calling at midnight. Jacqueline, he said, his voice serious. Sorry for the late call, but there's something you need to know. Your sister applied for a job here. She used you as a reference, but her application has some problems. What kind of problems? I asked, my stomach tightening. She says she has a finance degree and 4 years of experience, Justin said, papers shuffling in the background. She also wrote that you could confirm it. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. She dropped out after 1 semester. That's what I thought, Justin said. Jacqueline, with your position here, if she's lying, we need to handle this carefully. I sat up straighter, my mind racing. Justin, there's something I need to tell you about my family. 20 minutes later, I hung up. Scott and Helen looked at me, waiting. Well, Helen asked, her eyes wide. Justin's reporting her for lying on the application, I said, sinking into the chair. And he gave me tomorrow off to file the police reports. Good, Scott said, spinning his laptop around. Because there's more. Remember that private school Lauren went to for her senior year? The one they said waived her tuition. I nodded, a sinking feeling in my chest. They didn't, Scott said. Your parents used your name as a guarantor again. You've been paying for it through automatic withdrawals for the last 7 years. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. So that's why they told me to keep the joint account open. They said it was just for emergencies. Yeah, Helen said, shaking her head. The emergency was their lifestyle, and Lauren being completely useless. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mom. Your father is in the ER. His blood pressure is dangerously high. Please, Jacqueline, if you ever loved us. Don't answer, Helen said, grabbing my phone. They're trying to pull you back in again. I know, I said, pacing the room, my mind racing. But what if he really is sick? Then that's their problem, Scott said firmly. They made their choices for years. Another message popped up, this time from Lauren. If anything happens to Dad, it's your fault. I'll never forgive you. I took the phone from Helen and typed back quickly. If anything happens to Dad, it's because of the choices you all made. Choices that now have real consequences. What are you going to do? Helen asked gently, her voice filled with concern. I looked at the stack of documents on the table, proof of forged signatures, fake loans, and years of financial abuse, all laid out in black and white. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago, I said, picking up my phone. I'm calling the police. Then I'm calling every bank they've lied to using my name. They're your family, Scott said quietly, his tone more a question than a statement. No, I replied, my voice steady. They were. But real family doesn't do this. They're not just family, they're criminals who happen to share my DNA. And it's time they learned that karma wears a badge. The police station was cold, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh, sterile glow over everything. Detective Victoria sat across from me, flipping through the documents I'd brought, her eyebrows raised in disbelief. This is a lot, she said, looking up at me. You're saying this has been happening for years? I didn't realize how long until yesterday, I said, handing her another folder. These are the loan papers with my forged signature. I never signed any of them. And your parents and sister did this? She asked, her tone professional, but tinged with sympathy. Yes, I replied, my voice steady now, no longer shaking. They used my name to get loans, open credit cards, even co-sign a car. The detective made notes, her expression growing more serious with each page she turned. This is major fraud, she said. Once we move forward with these charges, there's no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this? My phone buzzed again, another message from Lauren. Dad's getting out of the hospital, no thanks to you. Mom's crying nonstop. How can you be so heartless? I showed the text to the detective. This is why I'm sure, I said. They're still trying to guilt me. She nodded, her eyes kind but resolute. I see this more often than you'd think. Family financial abuse is very real. Just then, the door opened and Justin walked in, holding a thick manila envelope. Sorry I'm late, he said, taking a seat. But I brought something important. He laid out more papers on the detective's desk. Lauren's fake job application was just the beginning. There are job forms, school records, and loan applications, all using Jacqueline's name as a reference or cosigner with fake details. She's been applying to jobs all over the city, saying Jacqueline would confirm her fake experience and education. Some companies are already launching investigations. Detective Victoria's pen moved faster, her notes piling up. This changes everything, she said. We're now looking at multiple cases of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. My phone rang again, Mom. The detective nodded. Go ahead. Put it on speaker. I answered, my heart pounding. Jacqueline, please. Mom's voice was weak, trembling with fear. The bank is threatening to press charges against your father. They're saying it's loan fraud. You have to help us. I can't, Mom, I said, my voice steady but heavy with years of pain. Not anymore. But we're family, she cried, her voice breaking. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done? I let out a bitter laugh, the sound echoing in the small room. You mean stealing my identity, faking my signature, and draining my accounts? We didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice desperate. We just needed help. You're so good with money. Mrs. Matau, Detective Victoria cut in, her voice clear and authoritative. This is Detective Victoria from the Financial Crimes Unit. I suggest you stop talking and call a lawyer right away. The line went dead. Well, that should give them something to think about, the detective said, gathering the papers. With this much proof, we should have arrest warrants by morning. Arrest warrants? My stomach twisted, the reality hitting me like a wave. They're actually going to be arrested? This is felony fraud, Justin said gently, his hand resting on my shoulder. What did you think would happen? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again with messages from Lauren. What did you do? The police are calling Mom and Dad. I can't believe you'd betray us like this. You're dead to me. The last message was a photo of us as kids, me helping Lauren with her homework, both of us smiling. Under the photo, she wrote, Remember when you were actually a good sister? This is what they do, I told Detective Victoria, holding up the phone. Emotional guilt. They take and take, and when you stand up for yourself, they make you feel like you're the bad one. It's manipulation, she nodded. Would you also like to press charges for harassment? Yes, I said, surprised by how sure I sounded. Yes, I would. Justin gave my shoulder a light squeeze. You're doing the right thing. They need to be held accountable. I know, I said, gathering my things, my heart heavy, but my resolve unshaken. I just wish it didn't hurt this much. One more thing, Detective Victoria said as I reached the door. Please save any future messages, texts, calls, emails. We'll need them for the case. They won't stop, will they? I asked, my voice quiet. Not until they're forced to, she said, handing me her card. But that's what restraining orders are for. Outside the police station, the sun was rising, casting a soft golden light over the city. My phone buzzed again. One last text from Dad. The police are here. How could you do this to your own parents? I typed back, my fingers steady, the same way you did it to your daughter, one signature at a time. Then I blocked their numbers, one by one, each tap feeling like a small step toward freedom. Justin stood waiting by his car to take me to work. Ready? He asked, his voice kind. I looked back at the police station, where Detective Victoria was probably already preparing the paperwork. Soon, my family would learn that karma doesn't just knock, it can show up wearing a badge and carrying handcuffs. Yeah, I said, getting into the car. I'm ready. They were arrested that morning. Helen dropped a local newspaper on my desk, the headline screaming, "Local family charged in identity theft case." I pushed the paper away, not wanting to see their faces splashed across the front page. I don't want to see it, I said, my voice tight. You need to, Helen insisted, flipping to the article. They're already trying to twist the story. Your mom gave an interview, saying you're mentally unstable and misunderstood what it means to support family. Classic narcissist move, Scott said, walking into my office, his laptop tucked under his arm. When caught, they try to make the victim look crazy. My office phone lit up again, another call from an unknown number. They've been trying to get around your blocks all week, Helen said, rolling her eyes. Watch this. I put the phone on speaker. Hello. Jacqueline, my Aunt Christina's voice came through, dripping with disapproval. How could you do this to your own parents? They're heartbroken. Lauren's reputation is ruined. Their reputation? I kept my voice calm, though my hands were shaking. You mean the one where they stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from me? Where they faked my signature? Where they committed serious crimes? Their family, she said, her tone insistent. Family helps each other. Really? I said, flipping through papers on my desk, my heart racing. Because I've got proof right here that they used your name too. Want me to tell you how much debt they put under your identity? The line went dead. Boom, Helen grinned. That shut her up. My email pinged with a message from Detective Victoria. Subject, thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot of Lauren's latest social media post. My sister destroyed our family because she's jealous of my success. Now she's trying to send our parents to jail. Please share our GoFundMe to help with legal costs. Oh no, she didn't, Helen said, grabbing her phone. I'm reporting that fundraiser for fraud. Don't worry about it, Scott said, typing on his laptop. I already did. And I sent screenshots to the prosecutor. They're claiming they're broke in court while begging for money online. My desk phone rang again. It was Justin. Jacqueline, come to my office. There's something you need to see. When I got there, Justin had more papers spread across his desk. Your sister's been busy, he said, his tone serious. She tried to open credit cards at 7 different banks, using your job title as proof. When that didn't work, she used our company's name. She what? I said, shock coursing through me. It gets worse, he said, handing me a letter. She applied for a job at our biggest competitor, claiming she was a junior analyst here and using you as her reference again. I'll add it to the list of fraud charges, I said, grabbing my phone. No need, Justin said, a small smile breaking through. I already did. He leaned back in his chair. But that's not the only reason I called you in. The board saw how you handled all of this, and they were impressed. They're offering you a promotion, senior risk analyst. I blinked, the words not quite sinking in. What? You found fraud in your own family and had the strength to report it, he said. That's the kind of honesty we need in risk management. Back in my office, Helen and Scott were waiting, their faces expectant. Well, Helen asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. I got promoted, I said, still processing the news. Yes, Helen cheered, throwing her arms around me. Told you karma works both ways. Just then, my phone buzzed with an email from my parents' lawyer. Your parents are willing to take a plea deal, but they're asking if you'll write a letter to the judge asking for a lighter sentence. Deleted, Scott said immediately, his voice firm. No, I said, already typing. Dear Mr. Gregory, my parents and sister committed financial fraud over many years. They stole my identity and took hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't show any regret until they were caught. Even now, they're trying to twist the story and make me the villain. I will not be writing a letter asking for a lighter sentence. Instead, I'll be sending a victim statement that details every time they faked my signature, every dollar they stole, and every way they tried to ruin my name. When I finally stood up for myself, they wanted to play games with the legal system. Fine. Game on. Regards, Jacqueline Maddow. Savage, Helen whispered as she read over my shoulder, her voice filled with admiration. No, I said, hitting send, a small smile tugging at my lips. Just honest. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a message from Detective Victoria. Your parents' house just went into foreclosure. They're being evicted next week. I stared at the screen, memories flooding back, Thursdays spent in that house, family dinners, holidays, birthdays. All of it fake, all of it paid for with stolen money and lies. You okay? Scott asked gently, his voice pulling me back to the present. I will be, I said, looking out the office window. The city stretched out below me, vibrant and alive, while somewhere out there, my family was finally facing the consequences of their actions. You know what's funny? I said, turning back to them. They always called me the responsible one, the boring one, the one who had to help everyone else shine. And now I'm the one with the promotion, the good credit, and a clear conscience. I turned back to my desk, ready to move forward. They can keep their drama. I've got work to do. Speaking of work, Helen said, opening her tablet with a grin, there's a house that just went up for sale. It's perfect for a newly promoted senior risk analyst. I smiled, the weight of the past lifting just a little. Show me. The courtroom felt smaller than I'd imagined, the air heavy with tension. My parents sat at the defendant's table, looking tired and worn in their formal clothes, their faces etched with worry. Lauren slouched behind them in the gallery, her eyes burning into me with a glare that could have set the room on fire. All rise, the bailiff said, and Detective Victoria gave my hand a gentle squeeze as I stood. You ready? She asked, her voice steady. I nodded, clutching my victim impact statement, a 4-page letter that had taken me weeks to write, each word carrying the weight of years of pain I'd kept buried. The state versus April and Walter Matthau, the judge began, his voice commanding the room. But before he could continue, there was a commotion at the courtroom door. My parents' lawyer rushed in, whispering urgently to them. Mom's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad dropped his head into his hands, defeated. Your Honor, their lawyer said, standing quickly. My clients wish to change their plea. They're pleading guilty to all charges. Lauren gasped from the back, her voice sharp with panic. Mom, Dad, no. The judge looked at them over his glasses, his expression stern. You understand this means there will be no trial, no chance to defend yourselves? Dad nodded slowly, his voice barely audible. We understand. Very well, the judge said, shuffling his papers. Before sentencing, we will hear the victim's statement. Miss Maddow. I walked to the front of the courtroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor, my hands trembling but my posture tall. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. I've spent weeks trying to count the financial damage my family caused me. Every stolen dollar, every fake loan, every account they opened in my name. But the real cost? That's harder to measure. Mom started to cry, her sobs echoing in the quiet courtroom, but I didn't stop. How do you measure the pain of betrayal? How do you explain what it feels like to find out that every time your parents said, "I love you," what they really meant was, "I love what I can take from you"? That's not true. Lauren stood up suddenly, her voice shrill. "Miss," the judge said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument, "sit down or be removed." I turned to face my family, my voice calm but unyielding. "You always said family means giving up everything for each other." But that wasn't true. What you really taught me was that family means finding someone easy to take from, someone who won't fight back. "Jacqueline, please," Mom said, reaching out, her voice trembling. "We can still fix this." "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady, my resolve unshaken. "We can't. Because you're not sorry for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught." The judge cleared his throat, his expression grave. "Given the guilty plea and the severity of these crimes, I'm ready to give the sentence." "Wait," Dad stood up, his voice desperate. "Your Honor, we did it for our daughter." "Which one?" I asked softly, my words cutting through the room. "The one you took everything from, or the one you gave everything to?" The judge slammed his gavel. "Mr. Maddow, sit down. Based on the seriousness of these crimes and how long they went on, I sentence both of you to 6 years in state prison, with a chance for parole after 3. You must also pay back everything you stole." Lauren started crying loudly, her sobs filling the courtroom. "This is all your fault," she yelled at me, her voice raw with anger. "I hate you." "Miss Maddow," the judge said, turning to her, his tone sharp. "You have your own trial next week for fraud and identity theft. Save your shouting for then." Outside the courtroom, reporters waited with cameras and microphones, their questions coming at me like a swarm. "Miss Maddow, how does it feel sending your parents to prison?" one asked, shoving a microphone in my face. "I didn't send them anywhere," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the chaos around me. "Their own choices did." "Jacqueline." Mom called out as officers escorted them past me, their hands cuffed. "We did all of this for you kids." "No, Mom," I said, meeting her gaze one last time. "You did it to us." "That's not the same." Dad wouldn't even look at me. Lauren tried to rush at me, her face twisted with rage, but their lawyer held her back. "You're dead to me," she shouted, her voice echoing in the hallway. "Funny," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Because I've never felt more alive." Detective Victoria walked over with a small security team, her presence steadying me. "Let's get you out of here," she said. "Your sister's getting a little unstable." In the parking lot, Scott opened the car door for me. "Want to grab a drink?" he asked, his voice light but his eyes concerned. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and showing him an email, "I have a house closing to go to." Helen's face lit up, her excitement infectious. "The one we saw last week?" "That's the one," I smiled, a spark of joy breaking through the weight of the day. "Looks like karma has good timing. My parents lose their house the same day I buy mine." "Jacqueline." Lauren's voice rang out across the parking lot. She'd broken free from their lawyer, her face red with anger. "You can't do this. Where are Mom and Dad supposed to live when they get out?" "Not my problem," I called back, my voice steady. "Try getting a job instead of asking for handouts. I hear Walmart's hiring." As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Officers were loading my parents into a prison van, their faces pale and defeated. Lauren stood alone on the courthouse steps, crying and yelling into her phone, her mascara streaking down her face. "You okay?" Scott asked softly, his voice pulling me back to the present. I thought about the house waiting for me, the new job, the freedom I was finally claiming. "You know what?" I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "For the first time in my life, I really am." He smiled, his eyes warm. "We've got a house closing to get to. Ready to start your new life?" I looked at the road ahead, wide and clear, stretching toward a future I could finally call my own. "More than ready," I said. "Let's go home." The last box landed in my new kitchen with a soft thud, sunlight streaming through the big windows, illuminating the granite countertops I'd fallen in love with during the tour. "I still can't believe this is mine," I said, running my hand over the smooth surface, my heart swelling with pride. All mine. Better believe it, Helen cheered, walking in with a bottle of champagne, her grin lighting up the room. This calls for a celebration, first night in your new house. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Lauren Mattow, 25, sentenced to 4 years for identity theft. I clicked the link, skimming the article. Don't, Helen said gently, taking my phone. This is your moment. No more family drama. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Detective Victoria, holding a folder, her expression a mix of professionalism and warmth. Sorry to interrupt moving day, she said as she stepped inside, but I thought you'd want to see this. Your parents tried to file an appeal. I sighed, a familiar weight settling in my chest. Of course they did. It was denied, she added, handing me the folder. Let me guess, I said, flipping through the papers. They said they were only trying to help their kids? Actually, she said with a smirk, they blamed you. Claimed you gave them permission for everything. I laughed, the sound sharp and freeing. Of course they did. The judge didn't believe a word of it, she said, her tone reassuring. Speaking of people making excuses, Scott called from across the room, his laptop open. You might want to see this. He showed me a social media post from one of my cousins. Family isn't family anymore. Jacqueline put her parents in jail, and now she's living large in a fancy house bought with blood money. Karma's coming for her. Blood money. I laughed, shaking my head. They mean the money I managed to save, the money they didn't steal. Want me to reply? Helen said, cracking her knuckles in front of the keyboard, her eyes gleaming with mischief. No need, I said, opening a box of kitchen supplies, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Let them enjoy their drama. I've got better things to do. Like planning your housewarming party, Helen said, pulling out a design magazine, her excitement contagious. This place is perfect for entertaining. The doorbell rang again, and this time it was Justin, holding a bottle of wine. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said, smiling. I brought a housewarming gift and some news. Good or bad? I asked, my heart racing. He grinned, his eyes bright. Depends. How do you feel about speaking at next month's Financial Security Conference? The board thinks your story could help people recognize financial abuse in families. I thought for a moment, my mind flashing to all the people out there, stuck in situations like mine, feeling afraid, guilty, or trapped. I'll do it, I said, my voice firm. Someone has to show them there's a way out. Perfect, he said, handing me an envelope. Here's your new contract with the raise we talked about. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number with the prison's area code. I hesitated, then answered. Jacqueline, Mom's voice came through, weak and shaky. Please don't hang up. I need you to know I'm sorry. Are you sorry for what you did? I asked, keeping my voice calm, or sorry because you got caught? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. Goodbye, Mom. Wait, she cried. Your father and I will have nowhere to go when we get out. Lauren can't help us. You're right, I said, looking around my new kitchen, where my friends were unpacking boxes and opening wine, their laughter filling the space. She can't. Because you taught her it's easier to take than to work for something. But you taught me something too, Mom. You taught me exactly who not to be. I ended the call before she could say another word, my heart racing, but my mind clear. You okay? Scott asked softly, his voice gentle. Better than okay, I said, pulling wine glasses from a box, a smile spreading across my face. I'm free. To freedom, Helen said, raising her glass, her voice full of joy. And to karma finally doing its job, she added with a grin. Detective Victoria glanced at her phone, a small smile playing on her lips. Speaking of karma, Lauren's being moved to state prison tomorrow. Want me to keep you updated? No, I said firmly, my voice steady. I don't need to know what happens to them anymore. Their story isn't my story. Then what is your story? Scott asked, helping unpack the dishes, his eyes curious. I looked around my kitchen, sunlight dancing on the walls, my walls. My friends stood beside me, their support unwavering. I had a career I was proud of, one that valued honesty, not lies. My story, I said, smiling. It's just beginning. And this time, I'm the one writing it. Well then, Helen said, lifting her glass again, her voice warm and triumphant. To new beginnings. And to Jacqueline, the woman who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well and keeping an eye on your bank accounts. Detective Victoria winked, and we all laughed, the sound filling my home, my real home, a place built on truth, not lies, on strength, not guilt, on independence, not control. Outside, a truck passed by, carrying away my parents' repossessed furniture to be sold at auction. But I didn't look. I was too busy deciding where to hang my art, picking out paint colors, and making this space truly mine. They say home is where the heart is, but sometimes home is where your heart is finally free. So, Helen said, opening her tablet with a mischievous grin about that housewarming party. I smiled, my heart lighter than it had ever been. Show me what you've got in mind. This time, every decision would be mine. Every choice would be clear. Every dollar would be earned. And it felt absolutely, undeniably, gloriously right. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.